This was real. These are the pictures they're not showing you. They're in my book, The Transfer Agreement. And they were filled to the rafters. And what they basically said, March 27th, what they basically said was, we don't want to boycott Germany, but you must stop now because we will not be reduced to, slavery. And the American Jewish Committee and the B'nai B'rith said, no, we're not involved. These are riffraff, just riffraff. And by the way, here's something else you don't know. The official position of the American Jewish Committee was anti-Zionism, and B'nai B'rith was anti-Zionism. They didn't believe in a Jewish homeland, a Jewish state, Jewish Palestine. It was only the East European American Jewish Congress that did. And I know all that changed later on. And bear in mind, I've been through their archives. I got their archives, right in their own offices. And so, this is Boycott Nazi Germany, March 27th, 1933. It was this and further declaration, it was not in business yet, declaration of boycotts that led to the famous Hitler boycott of the Jews in Berlin, April 1st, 4 days later. And in my book, I actually give the back and forth between the threats of the boycotts. Next. And they were everywhere. They were marching up and down the street, Woolworths. Next. And they had matchboxes. Don't buy German goods. The boycott is the moral substitute for war. Moral substitute for war. Remember, there was no Israel. There was no Jewish army. Okay? Just the nickels and dimes in their pockets. That was all they had. Today we have our boys. Back then we had nothing. But our ability to not buy a German beer and instead buy an American beer. And non-sectarian anti-Nazi league. NSALN. What does that mean? Not the Jewish boycott, but the intergroup boycott. Next. And they were everywhere in all the cities. In Los Angeles, they were in front of the New York German consulate. Next. Everywhere, for humanity's sake, do not buy Nazi-made goods on signs up and down the street. And what that meant is they canceled the orders, and they said, we're not going to replenish our stocks from German manufacturing. And instead we're going to buy the stuff from Milwaukee, we're going to buy it from Pittsburgh, we're going to buy it from Los Angeles, we're going to buy local, and once you lost the contract, you really lost it, and Hitler needed economic restoration from the Depression. He needed so bad, they changed the uniforms every week to give work to the tailors, to sew different buttons and different collars and different sizes on the actual German uniforms. Next. And they were everywhere. American Legion, Feed the Refugees. Nazi Germany has no place amongst the civilized nations. This was a big movement. And the Germans were constantly threatening, remember since the first few months of Hitler's regime, constantly threatening the cousins, the nephews, the brothers, and the sisters of the American Jewish organizations who were sheket and would not raise their voice. So this was a split within the Jewish leadership. Okay, next. Right there. And it was everywhere. It was not just in New York. It was in France. It was in Czechoslovakia. It was in Buenos Aires. It was in Canada. It was in Spain. It was in all of these different places. And when people are losing their job and the company has to fold, then people lose their confidence in the Nazis to deliver what they had to deliver. Remember, the Nazis never had an economic plan. Their economic plan was burglary, theft. That was their economic theory. Next. World Jews plan to widen the boycott. 35 nations meet in Amsterdam. There were international conferences. Boycott Nazi Germany. Do not go to German spas. Do not go to German hotels. Do not cross the Atlantic on a German ship. And this was killing them. Next. Deficit in exports shocks the Nazis. Imports show excess for the first time in 4 years. Jews are blamed. And what this meant in Germany was the Jews were further blamed for what was going on around the corner when the baker couldn't sell material because there was a boycott both in and out of providing and buying, providing goods to Germany and doing any trade with Germany whatsoever. Let's go to the next one. Nazis were asking, please, stop the boycott. The Berlin Commissar pleaded that it runs counter to our interests, and so they were pleading with the Roosevelt administration. Now remember this, ladies and gentlemen, the Roosevelt administration, FDR, let the Jews die. Right? Not one concentration camp was liberated. Liberated, forget bombing. Not one. Every camp where the doors were opened was opened by accident. Not one railhead was bombed. They made one bomb by accident when they tried to hit a rubber factory. Next. And the Nazi trade in the U.S. definitely suffered, and the Joint Boycott Council of the American Jewish Congress and the Jewish Labor Committee were working together and making an organized boycott. We have one more just as an example. And Gallup poll, the big poll in America, the survey, found that 65% are in favor of joining the boycott, and it was just going up by the year. Carol, you can go back to the cover page. That's all I have for reference. So what happened here is the Jews were so effective in boycotting Hitler, and Hitler was so frightened by the idea that it actually led to a special agreement called the Transfer Agreement, Havarah nach Palestina, where Hitler actually agreed to send, as part of this movement, a counteracting effort, 60,000 Jews to Jewish Palestine, okay, to Jewish Palestine, and the method that those Jews would go would be merchandise. So 2 banks were set up. And remember, you have to understand, Hitler shocked the world on January 30th of 1933. But up until that minute, Germany had been a major sponsor of Jewish Palestine. The Balfour Declaration. The Germans were responsible for saving the Jews from annihilation and extermination in Jaffa when they intervened with the Turkish Sultan during World War I. The Germans were instrumental. There was not one Balfour Agreement, there were 5. And the Germans made sure that not only did they give a Balfour Agreement, same words just in the German language, but the Turks gave one, the Japanese gave one, the Italians gave one, the French gave one. Let's go to the next one right there, Carol. Right. Okay. So, the transfer agreement was a direct counterweight to the boycott. How was it done? It was done by creating 2 banks. One in Germany called Paltroy, the Palestinian Troy Hanstelle, Palestinian Trust, and the other was called the Anglo-Palestine Bank on Higher Cone Street. To get the Jews out of Germany and to liquidate their assets and give them to others and restore employment, which was deprecated by the boycott, the transfer agreement said that a Jew could pack up his entire possessions, liquidate them, sell them, get money for them, and put them in a bank, and then move to Palestine. Now here's the problem to move to Palestine. The problem is the Arabs don't want the Jews in Palestine. In fact, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the head of the Arabs in Jerusalem, has a complete alliance with the Hitler regime. In fact, it was worldwide Islam and Arabs, with the Arab Higher Committee that was involved with the Hitler regime, without realizing that Hitler was actually bringing the Jews in. So to placate the Arabs, in addition to taking 73% of Jewish Palestine and inventing a brand new country that never existed called Jordan, which was done by Churchill one day in Cairo after a splendid bottle of whiskey and a map. The British, who had the mandate, they controlled Palestine, put a 1,000 pound barrier, permission slip for a Jew to get into Palestine. That means that there was a very, very skinny quota of Jews that could get into Palestine, but anyone could get into Palestine with 1,000 British pounds, also known as 15,000 Reichsmarks, also known as foreign currency, which Germany did not have because of the boycott, so it was very precious. So the Jews would purchase Nazi goods, printing presses, Palestine Post, pipes, Macarot, brewing material, cars. I know, you all saw the Mercedes in Israel. Clothing, building materials. And those would be bought by the refugees and sold for cash money, used to build up a home for the Jews in Palestine. And the sales proceeds would be deposited in the Anglo-Palestine Bank, now known as Bank Leumi. So, 60,000 Jews were saved in this way. And that means, and they had a similar agreement in Italy, in Hungary, in Poland, but it was stopped because there were no more economic transactions after World War after World War II broke out in 1939. And so they only had that 160,000 Jews, which seeded the future Jewish state. And it showed that the boycott was absolutely effective, because without the boycott, these Jews would not have been saved. And it also showed that the transfer itself was done because of the boycott. And this was the third time that this technique had been used. And that's why it was used again in 1933. It had been used in 1903 by Herzl, who went to the Tsar and said, "You want to kill a third, imprison a third, and exile a third? Give me these Jews, these millions of Jews that you want to kill. But I need their possessions to go with, so we can make a home for them. You can't just kick them out with nothing. We need to rebuild their lives." And the time before that was when Moses went to the Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go, but we need the cows and the cat and the sheep to come with to rebuild their lives." So, this is actually a story of Jews fighting back with the nickels and dimes in their pocket, but it's a great lesson for us. It shows that ultimately we're still alone. Thank you. Okay, let's have the questions. The questions are going to be as good as the lecture.